Hi there, and welcome back to the show. I'm so thrilled to welcome Christine Meintjes, an internationally acclaimed photographer and co-founder of the Pretty Blog and the Local Edit. At the end of 2024, Christine made the brave decision to step away from it all and take a sabbatical. We talk about what led her to this point, what she discovered about herself in the process, and what happens when you finally give yourself permission to stop. I'm so grateful Christine shared this chapter of her journey with us. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Lizanne.
Thanks for being on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, me too.
Christine, can you please give a bit of an intro? You've had such an interesting career doing so many things. So please explain who you are and what it is that you do.
Lizanne, I am Christine, and most people know me as Christine Meintjes. I started my career as a wedding photographer, and I was very fortunate to be in that kind of growth of digital when digital cameras just came out. And yeah, I was introduced to a wedding photographer at a very young age. I started working for her. And I started photographing actually at the age of 14 with her. So I've been working for a long time, and I have a very non-linear career path, if I could call it that. I'm going to borrow the words from Athena Calderon that says that we are multi-hyphenates. And I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but I absolutely love it. I think it's such a beautiful way to put out there who we are and what we do today, because I think or many of us don't have that very linear kind of professional career journey. And that's definitely me. I've had many, many careers, but all of them have been in this creative environment and in the world of beauty and design and aesthetics. And it's just been such a wonderful privilege to be in that. And I think it's probably like I have to thank my mom and obviously my dad for supporting my career choices. And when I started studying I have to go, my brain has to really calculate this now. So we were in matric in 2002. And so 2003, when I went and studied at Stellenbosch University, I was really a really good A student at school, did everything I had to do, ticked all the boxes. But I knew that I wanted to be a creative, and I knew that I wanted to do something creative with my life. What that was, I wasn't sure at the time. And I think also at the time there was very limited options. So we didn't have all these creative schools that we have now for tertiary education, and we didn't have YouTube and all these cool things that all the youngsters have now. But I went and I studied visual communication, and that gave me a very good foundation, I think, of the world of aesthetics, design, problem solving, essentially as a skill set. And I founded a company called Christine Meintjes Photography, which I then went on and photographed all over the world. I was really fortunate to grow a career in a very short period of time. And in that time period, I also was introduced to the idea of blogging, and I co-founded one of the first lifestyle blogs in South Africa called the Pretty Blog. And it grew tremendously because it was also in this world of pre-Facebook, Instagram, etc. And I think people were very hungry to see beautiful, wholesome content. And so we started that, and we had a very good, successful following in South Africa. And then I went on and founded another company with a partner that supported South African designers. And about a year and a half ago, I can't actually believe it's been that long, but end of 2024, I decided to press a very strong pause button. And as a mom with young kids, and I really worked very hard pre-kids, and I decided it was time to just take a break and also reassess. I don't think it was just a break. I think it was very much a reassessment of where we were as a family, what I was doing, how I was doing it. And yeah, when you become a mom, you have the opportunity to decide how you're going to build your family. And I think for me for me and for Ian, it was an important decision. And so I'm currently in that phase of transition and of figuring out what I'm doing. So I can't really give you a clear answer. If you've been on my Instagram, you've probably seen many bios in the past year. But I would, if I have to summarize it, I would say I'm an artist. I do a lot of creative exploration. I'm currently painting. I started painting with oils. As you can see, there's some work in the back. I also started with pottery, which I've really enjoyed. I'm still learning a lot and I have a lot to learn. But I'm also a creative consultant, and I consult for projects that I feel is something I want to be involved with. So that's kind of like what I'm doing at the moment.
Thanks, Christine. So many different directions that we can go with this conversation, and I'm really excited about talking to you in exactly this phase that you're in right now, this transitional phase, figuring out what's next, which I think is a very interesting space to be in. And having observed your career in the background, it's really interesting to get a sense of, okay, what's happened, and where are you now? Where are you heading? Before we talk about what it is that you're doing right now, I always ask people about, on this podcast, I ask people, when did they first know that they're a creative? And you mentioned your upbringing and your family home. Was there a specific moment for you where you can you pinpoint a moment where that became more evident that you're creative?
I can't pinpoint one exact moment, but I can definitely pinpoint a few micro dots, if I could call it that, that connected a little line for me. And if I have to highlight a few, I think one, coming from a home where my mom always supported and encouraged creativity, not necessarily always crafts and making beautiful, but problem solving. There was never a moment in our home where she supported the idea of you can't do it. So that's also something I've taught my kids. We never say, no, we can't. We figure it out. Like, there's always a way. And so I think that as a skill set to problem solve is essentially creativity. And so that was always part of our home. My mom is also, she's a creative by heart as well. She's a phenomenal chef. She's always enjoyed flowers and beautiful things. And so she's always also spent effort into making our home beautiful and comfortable and a safe haven for us. So I think that really is a very strong foundation for this world of creativity. But then also as kids, we did art classes. And I think that constant exposure to creativity, to not be scared of being creative or to try things. I think I only now, as a grown up, looking back, realize how important that is. Where I was constantly, it's almost like when you become used to the fact that you don't know, or you become used to the fact that you don't know what the outcome is going to be. It's almost the concept of becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable. And once you're at that place, then it becomes natural to just try things, But when I'm amongst other grown-ups that aren't necessarily in a creative field, I can see how comfortable I am with it and how uncomfortable they are. So I think it really has to do with exposure. So I'm very thankful for the exposure I had through my upbringing. And then I also think, going into kind of the teenage years and more a student, there was definitely a moment in, I would say probably around, we still speak about standard, but if I have to think about grade, like probably grade 9, grade 10, where I started realizing, I don't know if I really see myself as an accountant or a doctor or, a lawyer. I just never really had the ambition to become that. And the one thing that I wanted to do was be creative, whatever that was, So at a later stage I think standard 9 or matric, you make a career path decision. And I knew I wanted to go to university, but there was basically fine arts and graphic design and jewelry, and at that stage I just knew fine arts was not me. Jewelry didn't really fascinate me, but so graphic design was the choice. And I think even making a decision to become a creative at an age where you have to choose a career, it's quite a serious decision. And so I think if you have to ask for that pivotal moment, it was probably making that decision and then having the support of my family and my parents to say, yes, sure, we support you to go into that. And that's probably, I would say, where the tipping point happened.
You mentioned safety when you spoke about your upbringing and your family environment, and then you also mentioned being comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I wonder, for you there was a very fast pace in your career trajectory, and how do you? I think what I'm trying to ask is, in the world of business, if you want to be successful as a creative, there's the love of aesthetics and being able to create something of beauty, and then there's navigating the business world where things change, especially today at quite a rapid pace. That safe upbringing, what role did that play in supporting you as you grew as a business owner?
Wow, that's a complicated question, but I think it's a very good question, and I think it's a extremely, like, it is 100% part of the core of, I believe, of who I am and why I could do what I did, because my upbringing, being in a very safe, loving, caring environment, I believe helped me to form my belief in myself. And I think navigating life in general is complicated, and it's it comes with so many things that one doesn't plan and that one doesn't anticipate. And you can dream all the dreams, let's go back to the young, naive versions of ourselves. And I think it's so much easier to believe then in, it can do anything, right? But the older you become, the harder it becomes. And I think it's not because we don't have the same belief. I think it's because we've had exposure to what life really is, But I think growing up in an environment where my parents protected me from what I think was the correct things, the right things, giving me exposure to the correct things. I think essentially it's not about control, it's about care. And so it's about that caring environment where you give your kids what you believe is the best and what you can do and what you have capacity for. And I think hopefully through that there's a well-rounded individual that's being formed. And that is probably the biggest gift your parents can ever give you, is to have confidence. I was listening to a very interesting podcast the other day, and it's fascinating because I've always had this fascination with the concept of confidence and arrogance. And what is the difference, right? And it was so fascinating because then they were actually discussing it, and it came close to kind of what I've experienced in terms of, I think that many times we can be seen arrogant when you have confidence, but there's a big difference. And I think if you can give your kids, that's something I've always said to Ian, is if we can give our kids confidence, it's like a golden key, you give them to life. And that's really what I think my parents gave us, me and my sister, that we can do anything and we can figure it out. And there's no guarantee it's going to work out, right? Like, you also have to know, like, it's going to be uncomfortable. But having that confidence helps you, I think. I mean, I'm also just talking out of own experience here. It gave me the ability to say, let's try it. let's just try it. Let's see what happens. But then there's also another thing my parents taught us, and it's to not give up. So it's not just a confidence, try it, and luck of the draw, and you move on. It was like a stick it out, make it happen, do the best you can. If it doesn't work out, keep going. So yeah, a kind of tenacity, and I don't know, in Afrikaans we say hardkoppig, but like the people who know me will know that I'm very hardkoppig. So if you tell me, Ian always says the biggest motivation you need to give Christine is just tell her it can't be done. It'll be done tomorrow,
I will show you.
So,
watch me do it.
Yeah. Tell me it can't be done, show me you can't build a career out of creativity, and then I go for it.
Yes. Yeah, there's I think you have this incredible drive. I think I can see it. And your career path is a testament to that. So I want to know, there's this in some way there's also this golden thread of knowing when to make a decision to move on to the next project. This project is now complete. End a phase, move to the next phase. How do you make those kind of decisions? Because on the one hand, there's the pushing through and continue versus deciding to, okay, now this is complete, I'm ready to move on to the next project. How do you make those kind of decisions?
Wow, I think with each one of those decisions, it was probably ignited by something else, so there's always a counter to it. I think there's always like if you are fueled from the one side, you keep moving in one direction. But if there is a counter from the other side, then obviously that almost want to say the what's the right word? What do you call that? Now I've completely gone blank. But anyway, you understand what I'm saying. But it's like if there's energy from one side, let's put it that way. But if there's energy from one side, then I think it's very easy to become like momentum, like to get into momentum and just keep going. And if there's no real wobbles or real obstacles along the way, I don't know if some people have that life, but I definitely don't. But if that is your life, I think it's very easy to just keep on that journey and just keep going. But I think for me, there's always been wobbles, and there's always been a kind of like big moments on the side of that momentum. And I could probably turn a blind eye to it and say it's not important and keep going, but I like to question things, and I've never been someone that just accepts things for the way they are. So I think I probably get drawn into the journey of, okay, I could do this, but what if I stop? That's one thought pattern. The other thought pattern is when there is actual life changes, like for instance having a baby and becoming a mom. When in 2019, when Adi was born, it was one of the things that both Ian and I decided is that I would pause my photography. And I haven't really picked up the camera since then in a professional capacity. And it's been a long time. I didn't really think it would be that long. But the reasoning behind that was very practical. It was like at that stage, I was traveling a lot. I was going overseas like at least 3-4 times a year. And I was traveling a lot up north to Joburg and Bloemfontein and Durban to photograph. And I just didn't want that type of lifestyle as a mom, where I constantly have to be pulled away from my child in long stints, and where you have to pack and all the stress. I'm not good at stress. Like I actually am quite a stressor. So I have to manage my stress really well. And so I've also learned that when the stress becomes so big that I need to rather, pause something. So that was a big decision. But then, we didn't plan for this, but it was also pre-COVID, which was actually phenomenal. Because then, other opportunities came my way. So that worked out well. There's also things like, I think a lot of deeper, whether you want to call it spiritual moments or whether you want to call it moments of kind of like, you see yourself in the mirror, or you end up in hospital. And that's happened to me 3 times. Completely burnt out, where the doctor, there was a moment, end of 2024, where I told Jan, I have to take me to the hospital immediately. It feels like there's pressure on my chest. And, it sounds very melodramatic, or whatever you want to call it, but it was really a moment of like, I think I'm going to die now. And you get to the hospital and they take you up in ER and they put all the machines on you and everything. And then the doctor, after an hour or two, comes to you and tells you, you're really tired. You should rest. And you're like, wait, come again. Like, like, can you please give me some medication, or like, tell me what do I have? And they're like, you have exhaustion. That's what you have.
Wow.
And so to be driven, like to drive yourself into that place of exhaustion, or being burnt out, as we call it, it's not healthy. So there's a lot of you could tick a lot of boxes of like, oh wow, it looks great on Instagram, or you've started another business, or the business is doing well, etc., etc. There's a lot of things that we can look at, but then there's also the like, how are you as an individual? How are you doing? How's your family doing? How's your stress levels doing? I started having a lot of problems with my thyroid in 2024. Sorry, did I say 25? It was 24. Sorry, end of 24. So I took the year of 25 off, and I just like literally took a sabbatical because I needed to. And that was a very dramatic decision, and it was a very quick decision. And whether I'm really comfortable with it, I might look very brave by doing it, but it's still very hard. I think I have the gift of courage. Like, I like to be courageous and do hard things. It's just part of my makeup, I guess. But going through it doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it, just because you have courage doesn't mean that, you don't feel all things that you have to go through. But I also believe that the more hard things we do, the better we get at it. So it's something I think I embrace in my life. Both Ian and I, we don't run away from hard. We actually embrace hard. It's just how we do things. I don't know if that answers the question.
No, thanks.
Maybe create more questions.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you. That's you touched on so many different things, and it's interesting that you talk about the sabbatical, and it was such a courageous, radical, very, very radical step for you, and also very brave. And I can just imagine, given your career path up until then, how uncomfortable that must have felt. Just incredibly uncomfortable. So how did you navigate that? What kind of support did you put in place? How did you support yourself during that process?
I first cried a lot, and then I I think it's very human to embrace something exciting, like newness. Like, for me, newness is always exciting. And before that, I knew that I needed to pause. I knew it. It was like an inner instinct. It wasn't like, no one could convince me otherwise. But then that moment when you wake up and you're like, okay, this is now real. This is now it. I remember every month of 2025 felt like almost a whole different world. Like, I remember the first month, I said to Jan, it was like I've never, ever anticipated to be the person that stays at home. And when I say stay at home, I'm, like, we all, most of us work from home now, world has changed. But when I say stay at home, like, not to log into a computer, not to look at your phone. And I actually decided to not open, or I didn't actually own a computer for 7 months. I mean, the tech geek that I am, my husband being in the tech space, we've always been kind of in this segue of design and creativity and technology. And I just decided to not at the time I was part of a business, and the actual physical computer was part of the business property. So I gave it back, and I decided not to buy another computer. And so I, as a little challenge to myself, I was like, okay, how long would you be able to not, have a computer? I was like, not even a month. But I actually forced myself to also not be on my phone a lot, which was really a very hard thing, because all of a sudden you go from, at that stage, I was managing a whole team. I was on Slack every single day, and I would have all these Slack messages. And there's a few things that come to mind now. Sorry, I might go off a few tangents now. But the one thing that I think of is, again, I spoke about that, that energy that you start moving towards something, and you get into a momentum. And so now your day-to-day momentum, whether it is disrupted and whether you have a routine, or whether because some of us are good with routine. Some of us get up, we go to the gym, we do this XYZ, and then others of us are not great with that. And it's a little bit haphazard and a little bit all over the show. But either or, there's probably some form of natural routine that kind of happens. And if that routine is knocked out 100%, all of a sudden, you don't have to check an email. No one is looking for you. No one is asking you 1,000 questions. There's no clients or no customer issues. There's no technology that needs to be developed. There's no meetings you have to attend to. You are not needed as such. Okay, that's a big thing. That's like waking up in some weird world. And I remember that first month, I said to Jan, okay, I'm going to embrace this idea of almost like being unemployed now, and I'm going to have my cup of coffee at 9 o'clock in the morning when the kids are out of the house, and I'm just going to enjoy hearing the birds, etc. But Lizanne, I have to be honest with you, that first few weeks, it was the weirdest thing. I would keep going into that moments of but what should I be doing now? What should I be doing? And I remember my psychologist at some stage going to psychology sessions during my work career, and she would say, Christine, why don't you just sit and read a book? And I thought who has time to do that? Read a book. That sounds like some movie. Anyway, so yeah, I was, and I actually had the time. And so I started buying books. That was one thing that I really enjoyed doing. I loved exploring new concepts and ideas. And so I bought quite a few creativity books and books that explored the thought patterns of creativity, because I knew there was one thing I knew. I knew that I needed to pause. I didn't know where I was going. I knew that between pausing and whatever the future looked like, there's going to be some world that I'm going to explore. I didn't know exactly what it was, how it's going to look, but I knew that I had to be very intentional. That's the one thing that I think, if you ask me, what are the support structures? I think it was to be intentional, because I could very easily fill my days just with being busy again. And I did find myself doing that many times, where I would be sorting out cupboards, and I still do that because I am a bit of a control freak. But I would go into the kids' rooms and I would start sorting out their clothes. And, those are things one has to do every now and again, but you don't have to do it every day. And so I started realizing that it's very easy to fill time. It's very easy to now actually not engage with the issue at hand, which is rest, pause, think, explore. And the other thing I knew I needed to do was immerse myself in physical creativity. So actually making, whether it was in the garden, whether it was baking, whether it was, and I signed up for a few classes. So I would say, if you want me to go to the practical things, is I needed to be very intentional. And every time I found myself in a moment where I was like, no, Christine, this is actually an old pattern that just looks new. I had to pause. I specifically signed up for art classes and creative workshops, whether it was like a 2-3 hour creative thing, whether it was a thing I wanted to do or not. It wasn't about the outcome. It was just to like immerse myself in that. I started reading more. I bought quite a few books. I started listening to podcasts and just opening myself up to actually exploring new areas. But also another thing this was probably the hardest for me, was to say no to most business opportunities. That was the hardest, because all of a sudden there's no income. And you ask yourself like, okay, but now there's these things coming to me, like why shouldn't I embrace it? But I knew what would happen. I would jump into it and I would start like 100% immersing myself into it. And then I would lose this period that I actually wanted to explore what is the new thing. And so it might sound very fluffy and airy, but I was very, very intentional about saying no, about like immersing myself in creativity. And then also other structures like seeing a psychologist, speaking to people about what I was going through, being very honest about where I was, what my fears were, what my dreams were, and sometimes like, I'm also at that probably, as one wants to call it, like midlife stage now, where you do ask a lot of questions and you do ask like, okay, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Is this what I'm going to do And so I think it's very good to not just like have it as a glass of wine conversation, but to actually immerse yourself into the thoughts of that. Like, what do I really want to do? Because it takes hard work to change your life. It takes a lot of hard work. And so I think I probably stopped my work so that I can work on my life and what I wanted it to become. And I'm still working at it. I'm exploring the idea of the painting and the pottery now. And I don't really know where it's going, but I'm really enjoying it. And I think for a very long time, I was working with other people. And whether it was on projects for clients or whether it was with partners, business partners, etc. But I realized that it was time for me to set myself aside again and just focus on that, like that small little block of me. And it might sound selfish to some people, but I knew that that is what my personality needed. That's what I needed as a young mum. And I believe from there, things will grow again. Don't know exactly what it is.
Sure. I think I'm taking in everything that you said. I think what stands out is the bit about being very intentional. And it sounded like you had this very strong anchor during your sabbatical to help you return to that place. There were all these distractions or other opportunities that came along, and you had to come back to that place of being very intentional and kind of constantly come back to it.
Lizanne, you know what? I'm going to interrupt you there, but this is a very important thought, actually. I forgot to mention, but it summarizes the whole long story I just told. Is a thought I was exploring during that period of transitioning was, just because we can doesn't mean we should. And it's I think it's very fitting for our time as women specifically as well. And I found myself as a CEO in a boardroom, with all the things that I worked for so many years. But there was also a part of me that was like, should I be doing this? Is this how it should be? And at the time, I was enjoying it, and there was elements of it that I loved, but there was also elements that I knew could never be part of that picture. And so I needed to, for myself, make that decision to say, okay, just because I can do X, Y, Z, is that really what I should be doing? And so to return to the things that gave me joy, because you can you can very easily be distracted into areas that looks like what you worked for, but it's not always. Sometimes there's a very fine line.
Yeah, and I think what you speak to reminds me of an earlier question around making decisions, and you mentioned that you're keeping a sense of what's happening around the periphery, and there's an awareness of, okay, this is the bigger picture, and for you the bigger picture was what's happening to me, what's happening to my life amidst the success that I'm having in my career. And so what I wonder is this journey of being on the sabbatical. What did you learn about yourself that will direct the decisions you make going forward?
Wow. You have such difficult questions today, Lazon.
You can
but it's simple questions, but it's very important questions. And I think I don't want to just answer them frivolously, because I think it is there's a lot of depth in what I could share with you. But I'm also trying to think, how can I keep it in shorter sentences than my current way of explaining things. But I think the one thing I learned about myself, so I've always been quite self-aware. It's something I've always journeyed with, is to be aware of my personality, my way of doing. And I've always, I've always spent effort and time in things like, I don't know if you've ever done the Enneagram, but I'm
I'm
a
an
big
Enneagram.
supporter.
I'm Enneagram
You're a
trained.
coach.
So yes.
So I'm sorry. I just completely like that was a complete fail from my
No,
side.
that's
But
okay. That's okay.
I know that you're a coach, but I didn't know that was your
Yes, that's
foundation.
part of one of the tools that I use.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
mean, just for anyone listening, I would highly encourage everyone to do the Enneagram. It really changed my life. Like it completely changed my life and Ian's life. And I've done it a few times, and I journeyed with a good friend of mine that coached me for a few months, and it really helped me to understand who I am as an individual and my motivation. Because it's if you don't understand that, I think it's hard to sometimes actually live with yourself, to be honest.
True.
Because you make decisions, and your only way of assessing where you are at is to look at the other people around you. So all of a sudden you make decisions in a specific way, and now you have a partner or a husband or a friend, and you are almost testing yourself against that individual. But that individual has a completely different motivation. So now you almost see yourself as right or wrong compared to that individual. But it doesn't make sense, because it's like comparing apples with pears. Like, it's not the same fruit. So when I started understanding that world of we are actually completely individually manufactured, if I could call it that, and we have different ways of thinking about things, and what's going to make me feel like I can do this and make Ian feel like he can do this, is completely different things. And so when I started going down that journey, I realized that I am quite individualist orientated. And so my fight or flight mentality is when I feel endangered. So not the community, not my, like, I feel endangered. And so it's not again, if you understand this world of Enneagram, like it will make sense to you. And those who haven't done it might listen to me now and think I'm completely off my rocket. But it's quite a interesting topic, because before the Enneagram, I always thought that it's just selfish and like humble, or like, but all of a sudden all these worlds that we get introduced through life, you start realizing that for a specific individual, if they don't feel safe, they're going to run away. And so that is exactly what I started realizing about myself, is that I am actually the type of individual that does my best work when I'm by myself. And so for many years, I really pushed myself. I pushed myself for probably 15 years to become the person that can manage a team. You know, I really sucked at it in the beginning. I think I kind of not sucked at it at the end. That's kind of like how much I grew, right? Like I really tried my utmost best. Like I gave it my all. I got all the support. I did all the courses. I read all the books. You know, like I really tried my utmost best. And to the point where I started believing that I'm really terrible with people. That is really what I started believing. And Ian had to keep telling me, it's like, Christine, you are amazing with people. Like, look at when you do a workshop, or look at when you do this. And I was like, yeah, but Ian, why doesn't it like always feel like that in the office, you know? But I realized that it's different contexts. So when I am working, to go back to who I am, because you asked me who I am, is I realized that I'm a hyper-focused person, to the point that when you look at me when I work, you will think I am completely not interested in being here. And I am so focused that I actually look rude, but it's like my face cannot hide how intentional I am about this. So I'm hyper-focused, completely inner focused. I go into this world of isolation, and my brain works at the speed of light, and I'm just not a social being when I work. And so I think the context of the office, it was always hard for me. Like now that I go back, I can actually honestly tell you that I really did not like working in a team. I didn't like working in an office. I hated the concept of an open office, because every sound, every word that I hear like distracts me. So it's not about the people. It's not about the individuals. It's like the noise levels. So I'm a hyper-focused, I do my best work when I'm by myself, when I'm in silence, and my soul returns to joy and peace when it's like completely silent, you know? And I think that is something that I really tried to counter actually my whole life as a working grown-up. I tried to counter it because I thought there was something wrong with me.
Sure. Wow.
And now where I've returned to almost the world of art, I've realized that it's very normal for artists to be, you know, in a little dungeon all by themselves, and not to have other people around them. But in the office working context, or in the business or in the startup world where I operated for many years, it's like weird to be unsocial. And I think the one thing that it's almost like it felt like I got a little hug when I was surrounded with creatives again, because they are all like a little bit strange, and they are all like in some way all in their own heads, and they most of the time, not always, but most of the time, some form of an introvert, which I am 100%, and people never believe me when I tell them I'm an introvert. But the book, Susan Cain's book, Quiet, changed my life. It was like, oh my word, there's nothing wrong with me. I am actually allowed to be like this way.
Wow.
And I think this journey of taking a break, distancing myself from the environment that I exposed myself to for many years, allowed me to be okay with the things that make me feel like I love this, I love life, I love this project. And I think we have to expose ourselves to things that make us uncomfortable, and we have to be able to operate in the boardroom, and we don't have to. I mean, I had to because it was my career. But I think after many years, my question to myself was, is this where you want to be? And I can't tell you honestly that I don't ever want to return there, but for now, definitely not. And I love being at home in my studio. And my biggest dream is to like have a big studio where I can just like I see it like a playroom. I see it like that. That's what I allowed myself to do the past year, was to play. You know, like to just explore things. And yeah, it's actually telling you all of this is it's so freeing, because I actually can't believe, I have to be very honest, like it's been a very long journey. It's been a few months, and we initially thought, and I say we because it's been a family decision, you know, so Ian and I thought it would be like 2-3 months and I'll start a new business. And it's been almost 16 months now, where I haven't it's not that I haven't done anything, but I haven't really pinpointed what is my next step. I've been very careful to just start something again. And it's really been such a freeing, incredible journey to return to kind of where everything birthed from. And that is what excites me, because that helps me to believe in, okay, there is a future. There is something that will come from this.
Wow. I can tell you my entire body is, like, I've goosebumps all over just listening to your story. And I think I'm sensing the freedom that you know, even just talking about it, your face lights up. Being the fact that you enjoy being in the studio, you the sense of being nurtured, you know, you giving yourself a hug, you kind of coming back into your body, and also using your hands again, doing pottery, painting. It just feels incredibly nurturing. And you know, I'm looking at you, you're sitting there with a smile. There's this openness, this sense of freedom. And what an incredible gift to give to yourself, both this journey of self-discovery, understanding yourself better, knowing your core motivation, and then this journey of acceptance in some way, like accepting, okay, this is actually who I am, this is what brings me joy, this is when I do my best work, this is what it feels like. And yeah, what an incredible gift to give yourself.
No, 100%. I have to be honest, like it's just such a absolute like privilege to have been able to do this, but also it's been really hard, you know, it's been really hard, but it's been so worth it. It's been so worth it. And it's you know, things like practical things like income, etc. Like there's many changes you make to like actually take on this journey, but there's also I think there's so much that comes through choosing freedom. And that's the you know, the topic I always say to people, and you've mentioned it now, is the topic for me in the journey of my sabbatical was freedom. And that was really my motivation around everything. It was like, if I take on this project, that was kind of how I assessed it. So if I take on this project, will it give me more freedom or less freedom? And I always knew that it would give me less freedom, you know. Or if I choose doing this painting or whatever, will it give me more freedom or less freedom? And it would give me more freedom, because and so that was really because I think ultimately that is something I strive for, is freedom in all aspects, to be free from all the things around us, but to also be free in yourself, because I think if you're free, you can actually create. I realized in the beginning of this journey, it was very hard for me to create. You know, it was very hard. It's almost like there's a wall. It's almost like you just can't move past it. So you can go and sit there. It's like writer's block. You can sit there and you can have your whatever tools, and it just doesn't feel like you can create. But it's like when you have that sense of freedom, that's when you can create. And so I think I knew ultimately I want to create again. So if I can't be free, I won't be able to create. So I needed to go through that journey to get there.
You also mentioned Ian. You mentioned him a few times. What has been his role in this process? And still, you know, I know that You've been with him for so long. What is his role?
His role is everything. No, he's ultimately like, yeah, God's gift to me, 100%. We've been together since we were 17, as you know, and we've been together longer now than we've been apart. And it's just, he is really my rock. He's just so supportive of everything. He's been incredibly supportive through all my business journeys. He's always been there, always motivated me to go for bigger and better and higher. And, if I say, oh, I can't go to this trip because, AD's only 7 months old, he's like, no, like I'm his dad. I can look after him, and I would go to New York for 2 weeks and he would be looking after AD. Yeah, he's just incredible. He's a incredibly supportive dad, which I think helps a lot because we share the parenting role. It's not like a one-sided thing. And I know every family does things differently, but that works for us. And I'm incredibly thankful that he's a very involved dad. But he also has his own business. He is in the tech space, and him and his business partner have a software development company. But we dream together, we build together, and for a very long time, he was always very supportive of my business opportunities. And when this sabbatical kind of came up, I said to him, yeah, now the roles will change for a while, and I will be that person. So as much as we both enjoy cooking and we both enjoy many things, I take on that more home role again, and I drive AD around because now he's in school. So the afternoons are not my own. I only have the mornings now because school is quite a intense thing when you get there. But Ian is just, I actually can't put it in words, Lizon. He really is he is my mirror. He shows me when I need to change. He shows me when I'm being too hard on myself or when I should pick up my slack. But he's also my best friend. And he's just incredible. And I think there's no way I could have done any of the things I've done in my career without him. And through this journey, I kept asking him, like, when like I get nervous, I'm like, okay, well, I probably need to now, like, start things up again and go full force. And he just keeps telling me, he says, don't press any buttons before you feel 100% confident, because this opportunity is so important for you to find who you are, what you do, etc. So it's like I don't want to say we're at the end of the journey of the sabbatical, but I've just recently now launched my limited edition print. So it's like a first little step into getting out there. So yeah, there's like a few small things I'm starting, but I'm also being aware that I have to be a present mom. And so, I'm trying to juggle all of that, but who's Ian? He's my everything.
I have this very distinct memory of us in high school at one of the many dances we had. And I remember watching the two of you on the dance floor, and it's just incredible to think, so many years down the line, having been, you've evolved, both of you have obviously evolved into who you are today. And now it's incredible that at that young age, you knew this is your person. And, it's lovely to hear you talk about him like that, being that kind of support for you.
It's just, it's just grace. I believe it's just grace, and it's just God's hand over our lives. I mean, I can't not acknowledge that. That really is just what it is. And we love each other dearly, but we also, as you've said, we've changed a lot over the years. And I think it's also to give each other the space to evolve and to support that person. And, many people always talk about like, oh, it's a 50-50 or 100-100. But I think in, some cases in your life, like the one person can give 80 and the other one can only give 20. And then it's about like that support. And I can just honestly say, Jan's mom always jokes and says like and you talk about dancing now, but she always says like, we are like that couple that constantly dances around each other. And it's probably true. That's just how we do it. Is we just like, we just know how to it's probably been because it's so many years, it takes practice.
That's a beautiful analogy. Yeah, Christine, so I'm very excited to see what happens for you next. And I can imagine that this is going to be an interesting journey for you because you have evolved. You've come into contact with a deeper side of who you are, and so the way that you will be doing business, if you want to call it that, will be different and the way that you experience yourself in business will be different. So I think that will be really interesting to see, okay, how do you go about things now?
It feels like every day is a new day, and it's actually quite exciting for me because it's not the same old, so it's interesting. Let's keep it interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we kind of start closing our conversation, is there anything that you wanted to add or talk about that I didn't ask?
Not that I can think of. I think it's this podcast that you are doing, and the fact you're talking to creatives, I think brings different perspectives to the table, and I think that's very important. It's very important that we keep our we know that we have a perspective. I think that's something I'm trying to also establish and question as an artist, because I think we have to have a perspective, but it's also important to understand that there are different perspectives. And I think that's what's so great about this podcast, is to bring those different perspectives, and that people can take from the conversations that's suiting and fitting to them, and leave what's not fitting to them. So thank you for sharing my story and for having me on the show, and for giving me the opportunity to share a bit about this journey, because it's been incredibly eye-opening, if I could call it that, but also freeing. And as you'll see, and maybe that's if people want to read more about it, like on my website, they can go and see the Liberation series, which is a very interesting, like, I want to say, accumulation of works. There's 2 more coming, so I'm finishing this one is actually just drying at the moment, but there's 6 pieces that I did during that year of my sabbatical, and it was completely unrelated pieces. Like, I just really explored with paint. I didn't have an idea or a concept, or it was purely to just create. And at the end of the year, what was really interesting is how certain thought patterns and certain kind of themes came to being through the work. And I've now actually put all those works together, and I've called it the Liberation series. And the mountain at the back, there's actually one of them. And this is what took root. And there's another one called Free, which is similar to this one, but it's blued. It comes from a deeper place. But yeah, I think it's very interesting to see how, without having a plan, if you kind of go through those explorations, how things can come together. And so, so that's my Liberation series. But I don't have anything planned. So it's like, we'll just have to see how things go.
So exciting. Maybe just the last question. What would you, if you think back to the Christine who made the decision to pause, and you said very clearly that you knew that was what you had to do. If you had to give some advice or offer something for someone who's listening to this, perhaps, and they're at that phase, that stage where it feels incredibly daunting, but they know that they actually know that's what they need to do. What would you offer them?
I think the thought that comes to mind is the idea of faith over fear. Because I think there's only two ways we make decisions, or there's only two ways that action is driven in our lives. And the one is through faith and the other one is through fear. And I think most of us, whether we want to admit it or not, are driven by fear. So we build these walls around ourselves and we build structures to keep things in place because what if, right? So there's always this question. But I think if we are more playful and more childlike and not so, what's the right word? Like almost like cautious. I think most of the time, like very few of those fears are going to happen. It's all constructed. It's not real, right? But what if you didn't give yourself the opportunity? So I decided to jump for the faith one and not let the fear hold me back, even though I had at the time a great salary. I was part of a great company. It made no sense. That's the one thing I can tell you. Now that you listen to my story, it might sound like, oh yeah, that's her story. No, it made no sense to no one. And I just knew, like I had a gut feel inside of me, this was going to be the pivotal moment and I have to make the decision. And it's like an opportunity that was given to me. And I was like, do I take the opportunity? Yes or no? But there's no guarantees. And I just decided to opt for the faith approach. And I think that we have to be less fearful in life and be more open to the opportunities that what if.
Thank you. What a note to end this conversation. Thanks so much, Christine. I'm just so grateful for this conversation at this very stage in your life. And who knows, maybe we can pick it up again in 10 years' time. See where we're both at by then.
Let's not wait that long. Thank you, Lizanne.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.